上午好，感谢参加今天的纪念活动。我是今天的主持人王艳。今天是一个特殊的日子，一个悲伤的日子，一个纪念的日子。今天我们在此举办华社国殇奠，共同纪念加拿大国殇日。下面有请我们本次活动的发起人黄素梅女士为大家介绍加拿大国殇日的历史和由来。谢谢。
Good morning, good morning. I want to welcome all of you here at Scarborough Asian Court. My name is Sue Wong, and I want to say a few words about November the 11th. Every year on November the 11th, Canadians remember the men and women who serve and sacrifice for our country, to defend democracy and to advocate for peace. On November the 11th, every Canadian, young and old, pause to give thanks and to remember these courageous men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice to serve our country called Canada. 每年11月11日，加拿大人都會記住為我們的國家服務同犧牲，捍衛民主同倡導和平的男男女女。 So this time, I want to recognize many good friends who are here today, and I want to say thank you for spending your morning with us. So let me begin by recognizing Terrence Ma from the Splendid China and your team. So thank you for hosting this special community Remembrance Days event for our community. Councillor Amanda Kaluji from Markham, our neighbors next door, right? Markham, welcome. I don't see Councillor Jim Lee yet. And my good friend, Minister Michael Chan. How can we not thank Minister? Thank you for being here. And many of the Chinese community leaders who are here today. I think also want to recognize Barbara Dixon, a special guest today who will be reading a portion of her book. I need to encourage all of you to stay behind to listen to Barbara's story. I also want to recognize some of my colleagues. Manel Abdullah, who is the Liberal candidate for Scarborough Rouge. I know others are coming shortly because there's a lot of events across the city, as well as all over for Remembrance Day. And I want to recognize some of my community in Scarborough Asian Court. You're going to be hearing from Sylvia Percy. Sylvia is a renowned teacher, but also a big advocate for education. Sylvia, we're looking forward to hear your benediction shortly. So thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the service today. Thank you.
非常感谢今天活动的支持单位：家中经贸文化交流协会、加拿大时代会计师事务所。 格外新建筑装修公司、嘉雄移民集团，感谢你们的支持。有请刚刚苏介绍过的我们的嘉宾上台，和有请黄志勇、魏建国、屈良国、陆炳雄先生上台，我们将一起进行1分钟的静默致敬。So the guests who Sue just mentioned. Please step on the stage for 1 minute silence. Thank you so much. 请全体起立，我们将进行1分钟的默哀致敬，请大家将胸手放在胸前，低头。 好，谢谢大家。Thank you very much. 下面有请加拿大妇女协会会长梁梅英女士上台为我们演唱《All Canada》，谢谢。下面有请 W Films 李兰和时代会计师事务所代表魏建国先生朗诵《在弗兰德斯的战场上》。
在弗兰德斯的战场上，罂粟花绽放。在弗兰德斯的战场上，绽放在十字架之间，一行又一行。在这血染的战场上，天空中，云雀在勇敢地歌唱，展翅飞翔。歌声淹没在枪声中，我们已逝。回首几日过往，我们也活过，感受晨曦与晚霞，爱过，也被爱，直到我们长眠于弗兰德斯的战场上。请继续我们的战斗。捡起从我们手中滑落的火炬，高举，让它照亮。千万不能背弃我们牺牲者的誓言，否则我们将永不安息。罂粟花还将继续绽放，在佛兰德斯的战场上。
In Flanders fields. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, fell down, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we threw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep. Though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
非常感谢。下面苏木介绍一位特别，今天的一位特别的一个客人，有请苏。
So it gives me a great pleasure to invite our very special guest who are here today, Barbara Dixon, who I've known for a couple of years, quite a few years now, I would say, when I was the MPP for Scarborough Asian Court. Barbara is a Scarborough resident, is an award-winning, best-selling, multi-published author, and sought-after professional trained speaker. And today is one of probably 3 speaking engagements this week just about Remembrance Day and all the activities dealing with Remembrance Day, and local historian. Barbara's work focuses on the invaluable contributions made by Canadian women. So for the First and Second World War, often we only remember is only men in the war, when in fact there are many, many women, such as the bomb girls, worked during the Second World War. And the story is quite unforgettable. And I want all of you to listen attentively to Barbara's book. But more importantly, we are very honored to have Barbara here with us today to read a portion of the Bomb Girls, Trading Aprons. That's really interesting for Amo. That's the title of her book. And the fact that the book is about Scarborough. So thank you, Barbara, for joining us this morning and share your story with us. So come on up.
Thank you very much.
You want to take a seat while you read the book? Would you like that?
Good morning, everyone. On September 10, 1939, Canada was thrust into a growing global conflict of near 2 decades after the armistice had been signed for the war to end all wars. The First World War had left a legacy of human suffering and destruction that the free world hoped would never happen again. No nation would be allowed to arm aggressively for any significant conflict. Tragically, promises were not kept, a failure that ultimately would cost a staggering loss of life. Some estimates attribute the loss of 55 million souls to the Second World War, with over 81,000 Canadian casualties. The greatest man-made conflict in human history would be fought in the air, upon every sea, on every continent except Antarctica. On that fateful day in September 1939, Canadians knew that if they had any hope to beat Hitler and his belligerent bullies, the Allied forces would not only need every able-bodied man Canada could muster to fight, but a steady stream of ammunition as well. On January 27, 1941, His Majesty King George VI of Great Britain issued an expropriation decree for lots on Concession C in Scarborough Township, affecting 7 landowners. Within 2 weeks of the King seizing Canadian soil, lumber and materials were delivered to the future plant's home, 350 acres of knee-deep, snow-covered farmland. The book, my book, Bomb Girls, tells the incredible story of over 21,000 dedicated Canadians, predominantly women, who filled over 250 million rounds of ammunition for the Allied forces. Initially hired to build other wartime factories, the General Engineering Company Canada Limited was given the responsibility of designing and building the shell-filling plant, as well as selecting, training, and organizing its staff and overseeing its operation. The installation would come to be known simply as GECO, or Scarborough. The complex was built in record-breaking time, only 236 days. A feat that would be entered into the annals of Canadian war history. The extraordinary record is an everlasting credit to the thousands of men and women who worked so tirelessly with a united and steadfast goal to get the biggest and finest munitions factory in Canadians' history into meaningful production as quickly as humanly possible. GECO's story is unique from its wartime counterparts in several ways. GECO is the only wartime plant in Canada dedicated to filling fuses, primers, detonators, and tracers. When the war ended, the plant had filled over 256 million rounds, providing the catalyst behind the greatest quantity of heavy ammunition manufactured in Canada from 1940 to 1945. Scarborough became the largest fuse filling plant in Canadian history. Incredibly, less than 4 months from the turning of the first sod in February 41, the first fuse filling workshop was completed. The plant went into volume production in July, and by September, construction workers had erected over 170 buildings. Almost 99% of all production submitted to the government inspection was approved and accepted into service, an extraordinary feat achieved by seamless teamwork. Imbued with the resolve to reach maximum production without sacrificing quality, workers etched every filled fuse that left Scarborough with an SC/C, Scarborough, Canada, as a mark of quality recognized by not only fellow Canadians, but also allied and enemy forces from around the world. Lastly, GECO would suffer no fatal accidents, despite thousands of women handling high explosives and gunpowder 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 4 years. This accomplishment was rare in global arsenal practices. There is no argument GECO had a lethal product line, but the munitions plant's real vim and vigor didn't come from explosives. GECO's true strength came from its employees who faithfully showed up for their shifts. Patriotic men and women put their personal and family needs aside to produce ammunition, jeopardizing their own lives and those of everyone working alongside. As the war progressed, the ratio of women to men in the plant rose to a staggering 9 women for every man. These women, before the battle cry came, were content in their domestic duties, tending to husbands, house, and children, or they were single young women living out their carefree lives as far away as Alberta and British Columbia in Western Canada. These same women, who patriotically heeded the call, were thrust into wartime work by the hundreds of thousands throughout Canada and the United States. Many women who worked at GECO had loved ones in active service overseas. Some had not only husbands, but multiple brothers and sons, grandsons, granddaughters engaged in war work, both on the home front and the front line. The Second World War brought women's employment in Canada to the forefront of industry. Seemingly overnight, women entered into industries that were predominantly male-dominated. In addition to a sense of patriotism, many factors drove women to seek work. For professional women, with men off to fight, it was an opportunity to progress in their career within patriarchal organizations. Other women found it a struggle to make ends meet on the small stipend their husbands fighting overseas sent home. Others worked because their menfolk were jobless from the economic effects of the Great Depression. For young single women, war work offered the prospect of traveling away from home. City life looked romantic, exciting, and novel. The story of Scarborough evolved over its 4-year term, in step with the vagaries of a world at war. By the time GECO launched its massive hiring campaign during the fall of 1941, the war in Europe was already well into its 3rd year. Hitler had seized Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and France, and was doggedly determined to annex Britain and Russia. The need for munitions was acute. It would be only 4 months before Japan launched their cold-blooded assault on the U.S. Navy at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, followed by the fall of Hong Kong on Christmas Day. The free world was at war, and no life in Canada or overseas was exempt from feeling its troubling effects. GECO employees lived, worked, and prayed on the home front. They read the evening newspaper filled with grim war news. They gave up sugar in their tea and precious dollars for war bonds. They watched as somber GECO staff deliver telegrams to fellow fuse fillers in the workshops, announcing the saddest news of all, that a loved one was missing in action, had been taken prisoner, or had been killed while fighting the enemy. The women of GECO gave every fuse their full and undivided attention, not just because they were handling high explosives, but also because they wanted their men home. Great Britain, homeland to many women at GECO, was taking a pounding Luftwaffe style. The world then more than ever needed war plants, including munitions enterprises like GECO, if the fight for freedom had any hope to claim victory. Thankfully, the tide of war turned towards an Allied victory in 1944 with the invasion at Normandy, and then on May 5th, 1945, when Germany unconditionally surrendered, followed by Japan 3 months later. 80 years have passed since King George expropriated farmland to build a top-secret munitions plant in Scarborough, yet remnants of the ammunition factory are still there today. Yes, can you just take that? Thank you. A testament to the incredible workmanship of her builders. The need for a munitions plant has long since passed, but GECO's legacy lives on in its last surviving buildings and tunnels buried under the city as an invisible reminder of a nation that went to war. GECO lives on too, in memories of those who worked at the plant, in the hearts and minds of children who remember their mom or dad faithfully serving their country doing war work, and in the memories of thousands of children who live with their families in emergency housing set up at GECO after the war ended. It will take a nation to teach each man, woman, and child the terrible human toll that war brings. Every child who lives today, as well as every child to come, must not only learn about the colossal human struggle their brave Canadian forebears undertook on their behalf, both abroad and at home, but they must also pause to remember, lest we forget.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I think the story that Barbara shared with us today is about remembering not just about the Second World War, the First World War, but also the contribution of these courageous women that nobody has talked about until most recently with Barbara's book. I want to ask a couple of questions, Barbara, since you're here as the author. It took Barbara 10 years to write her book, 10 years. So during your time when you were doing the interview, and as well as research of the book, you interviewed some of the bomb girls.
Yes.
Are there any of the bomb girls still alive today?
There are still some bomb girls alive today. They're all about, at least in the high 90s, or over 100 years old now. If I think about it, there probably, I know of about 5 or 6 that are still alive.
I think we need to do more as a country, as a community, to recognize these women, because they also serve, but was never recognized by the Canadian government and the people of Canada, and also the Commonwealth. And I want to recognize my good friend Maz Shafiq, who's here today. In his writing, Scarborough Center is where the beautiful mural, so I'm going to encourage all of you to check out. In Scarborough, down at Sinclair and Warden, near the Warden subway station, there's a beautiful mural about the bomb girls. So you should have a look at it and think of those women who contribute to the Second World War, but also to serve Canada in different capacity. Like we always remember the soldier overseas, but also here as well. Now, Barbara, during the time you were doing the research research. You also talked to the heirs, the relatives of GECO plants, right?
Yes.
I remember reading that in your book.
Yes.
So can you share with the audience today, what did you learn from them? The sons, the wives, or the executive of GECO that you interviewed?
You mean as the executive of GECO?
Yes,
So the GECO was a mining company, and their president and vice president, Bob and Phil Hamilton, they were very proud, patriotic Canadians, and they oversaw the operations of the plant. But the Hamilton brothers were just an incredible family. The Hamilton family is just, I can't think of a more humble and wonderful family. And they oversaw the operations of this plant, but they just imbued all of their integrity and their attention to detail and their striving for excellence. And even though GECO at Scarborough was a non-profit, it was run by the Canadian government, and the GECO, the Hamilton brothers didn't receive a huge paycheck managing this plant, but they took their personal pride and they wanted to make sure that not one person would die while at GECO, while they worked. And I believe it was because directly attributed to the Hamilton brothers that not one person died at the GECO plant, and that's running 24 hours a day, 6 days a week for 4 years. Other plants across the country, there's a DIL plant in Pickering, which is now Ajax, and several people died in explosions there. Many people were injured. I know of a woman who worked at DIL who had both hands blown off. But at Scarborough, because of the Hamilton family, because of these two brothers, proud Canadians, not one accident like that was ever reported.
So they were ahead of the time when it comes to workplace safety.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So these are very important story and history. Now I know you're doing some work right now to protect, to preserve the memory of the GECO plant in Scarborough. Do you want to share that with the audience today, Barbara?
Yes, I have several projects underway. I'm really happy. I was approached by the City of Toronto to actually help name some streets that are down in that area now. So if you're down in the Boardman St. Clair area, you will find Fusilier Road and the Keenside Drive, which is pretty awesome. I'm also working to try to get what remains of GECO designated as a heritage site. I want to preserve what's there. There are 20 original buildings there today, and that in itself is a testament to the pride of workmanship that went into the erection of this plant. I would like to see a plaque. I really, though, my legacy, I want to see a museum. I want to see a museum in one of the original workshops where we can bring the children, the public, the future generations, where they can see what these women did and they can learn about what happened on the home front during the war.
So with regard to his legacy project, I'm going to call it the legacy project, Barbara, have the federal government, the local MP have reached out to you about this particular initiative that you're embarking?
Not yet.
Okay, we got some work to do, my friends. So when you leave here today, I'm going to encourage you to take time to have a chance to read Barbara's book, Barbara Dixon, The Bomb Girls, but have a conversation with your local MP, because what Barbara is striving for is this kind of history in our backyard. Like right now we're in Scarborough Agent Court, just south of here is Scarborough Center where Maz is from. It's that kind of story, because when these bomb girls passes away, there's only a handful of them, they need to be remembered by the Legion. Like we know the Royal Legion remember the veterans. Why aren't these girls being remembered?
Yeah, they truly are the unsung heroes of the war.
Yeah.
That they were instrumental by filling munitions to put something in the guns for the men on the front line.
They are the silent partner and supporter of this war to keep Canadian and our allies, particularly the Commonwealth countries, because this GECO plant here in Scarborough, if my recollection is correct when I read your book, Barbara, is the largest animal factory in
Canadian history.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is very, very important story. I hope all of you take away from this story to remember these women, but also the sacrifice they made during the Second World War, 6 days a week, 24 hours. day during those 6 days and for 4 years to support the war, but also to keep Canadian soldiers safe overseas. So thank you so much, Barbara, for taking the time to be in here today. Now, are there any questions from the audience for Barbara? Have any of you heard about this story? Nobody. Boy, Barbara, this is enlightening.
You've got a lot of work to do.
You got a lot of work to do. I still remember when you came to Queen's Park, Barbara said, I need to share this story with you. And I looked at her and I said, okay. I said, this should be in every classroom. This should be in every single school, because this is about history. This is Canadian history. And at the same time, we need to make sure those courageous women should never be forgotten, especially when the numbers are so low, and that the Canadian government and then the Canadian Museum should be interested. So we got lots of work to do. I cannot stress enough to encourage all of you to go to your public library or go to chapters and the bookstores to take the book out and have a read, but please have a conversation with your family and your friends and your local MP about the contributions of the bomb girls to Canada, to the world during the Second World War. So thank you again, Barbara, for being here.
Thank you so much, Sue, for a wonderful opportunity.
So we got lots of work to do. I cannot stress enough to encourage all of you to go to your public library or go to chapters and the bookstores to take the book out and have a read, but please have a conversation with your family and your friends and your local MP about the contributions of the bomb girls to Canada, to the world during the Second World War. So thank you again, Barbara, for being here.
Thank you so much, Sue, for a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for sharing all this with us. 非常感谢 Barbara 跟我们分享的这些重要的内容。那么也感谢苏。接下来呢，我们有请 Sylvia 做闭会祈祷。
Okay, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Sylvia Percy, and an esteemed special education educator for many years, and a strong advocate for children across this great city. And I know I cannot think of a better person who will bring benediction on today's service and event. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue, for inviting me. And now could we just bow our heads for a moment of silence here as we talk to God. Almighty Father, help us to remember that freedom does not automatically perpetuate itself, that we have to work at it, nurture it, protect it, and pray for it. Freedom, like faith, needs our attention and our cooperation. Thank you for this memorial service today. Lord, be with us now to strengthen us, to keep us, to protect us, to direct us. May you lift up your countenance upon us and give us peace today and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Sylvia. I want to thank all of you for being here today for this very special occasion, but also to remember those who have served in the First World War, the Second World War, the Afghanistan War. There's a number of wars right now going on. There's not a lot of peace out there in this world. So thank you for taking the time for being here today to share with us, with our community. I want to recognize the former Councillor Chin Lee for the City of Toronto. Chin represented the great riding of Scarborough North, am I correct? Yeah, I know there are other colleagues who will be joining us a little bit later. I know there are many services going on, so thank you again for being here today. And I want to keep encouraging you to advocate for democracy, fighting for peace is the right thing to do. Thanks, and have a great day too. Thank you.
非常感谢今天各位嘉宾的光临，我们今天的纪念活动到此结束。我们活动准备了一些点心和咖啡，请来宾们享用。再次感谢大家，大家 have a good day。